Welcome to Alt Reality Podcast, an exploration in sight and mind, a travel into the unknown, finding the impossible and making them possible. Join us on our journey into the world of conspiracies and metaphysics. Currently streaming on all podcast platforms under Manbitesretro. Welcome everybody to the first episode of Alt Reality Podcast. For anybody trying to figure out what the hell this is, what the hell does alt real actually have to do and all that stuff, well, it's all about the alternate reality in all existence, meaning any metaphysical aspects of life, anything that really goes into the spiritual realm as well. And the coolest part is alt reality also covers conspiracy theories. And this week we are covering not only one of my favorite conspiracy theories because it's kind of insanely amazing and intricate, and all the different aspects that we can imagine that we want to cover in this show are all part of this. And this is the faking of the moon landing. My name is Luis Lacau. I represent Manbitesmedia, and I have an amazing guest with us this week, Alexcage.
How's it going?
Good. How about yourself? Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can find you, and all that jazz.
I am Lexa Adams on Instagram for pinup, dapper, inspired things, as well as some cosplay, and Alexcage on other social media.
Sweet. Awesome. So right off the bat, I want to go into a little bit of the back history of rockets and how we actually got to the point where they were able to launch a crew of 3 people into outer space and land on the moon. So the first rockets really came around during World War II. The Germans, like everything else, they were experimenting and building these massive engineering feats. And the V-2 rocket was actually the first one of its kind. It was basically an ICBM, which is intercontinental ballistic missile. So this is something that could travel from Germany to, say, the United States or England or Japan, China, all that stuff from Germany, which is pretty fucking phenomenal if you're in a war against these countries. And mind you, this is about 20 years before every other country had it. These scientists were extremely good at what they did. And 2 of the scientists went their separate ways after World War II ended. And a part of another conspiracy theory that we will eventually cover is Operation Paperclip, which is basically where they grabbed German scientists and integrated them into U.S. Scientific fields and all that stuff, and kind of covered up the whole process of it. And it's pretty fascinating shit. And then the other scientists got captured by the Soviets. And these 2 scientists are the ones that basically invented space travel. And if it wasn't for these 2 scientists, von Braun and the other name escapes me, Sergei Korolev, those 2 were basically the main people that created space travel in any way or form. And each of the different space races, the countries, they had their aspects that they were better in. The U.S. had a better access to actually launching rockets that could go further than the Russian rockets. But the Russian rockets were able to get there quicker to breaking the actual barrier between the Earth and outer space. And that's why they made all these crazy milestones. And that plays a huge part in this whole thing, because in the early 1960s, our wonderful president, John F. Kennedy, decided to say, we are going to the moon in one of the most amazing freaking speeches ever. And I'm gonna play a little clip of the speech. That way, everybody, I'm pretty sure, has heard it. But let's play it anyways.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. We shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
So yeah, that was the speech, and imagine that being said now by a president. First of all, it won't happen with this person in office, but because he definitely cannot replicate, not even copy, the elegance that John F. Kennedy had. And this was amazing because this pushed the government to say, we got to reach that goal. The president just said we got to hit that goal. That means we got to do it. So John F. Kennedy was very known for basically calling out all these government cover-ups and black ops and all that stuff. So this is where we'll actually go into a lot of conspiracies afterwards in the latter part of the episode. But yes, that set in motion everything that could happen. Now, I want to jump into some of the stuff that we were going to cover in this, because this is going to play an important part in where we're going to go from here. So, Alex, how familiar are you with the actual official telling of the moon landing, what happened, and all that jazz?
I'm relatively familiar, and of course, from researching it again in future times, with even going down to saying Neil Armstrong commenting that this can go into a future episode of Mandela Effects, how he swears up and down that he said something else from what is known of his famous comment, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Yeah.
And I'd have to look up what he
was
says.
Intending for it to say one small step for a man.
Yeah.
Not for mankind. And it's, I mean, I could see where you kind of mess up that line, because first of all, you're in the middle of goddamn landing on the moon and you're nervous because you're being watched by how many people? So imagine if he fell down those stairs. Like, can you imagine the ridicule that he would receive? It's like another Ford moment, and it's like, no, you don't want that. So,
well, I mean, if you think about it, they already get ridiculed because of the people who do believe in the conspiracy theory that the lunar landing wasn't real.
Oh, they do. And there's, I don't know if you've seen it, the video where they confronted, I think it was Aldrin, It was Buzz Aldrin, and he literally punched this guy in the face.
I've never seen that.
Oh yeah, one of these conspiracy nuts. They go straight up to him and they say, "I think that the moon landing was fake," and he starts throwing off a whole laundry list of facts that backing up his claim. And he goes, "It's so dishonorable that you would do that to this country," and he just turns around and punches him in the face. It was hilarious. And, and that kind of sets apart the whole thing that we're talking about, though. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the actual moon landing that is questionable. And I want to go into some of that stuff, because obviously the moon landing was the moon landing, but did it actually happen? Did it happen at the time that they said it happened?
That's the only one that I don't agree with. And now I'm not saying that the lunar landing was faked or anything like that, but and I'm sure there's a lot of science and math that goes into it that I'm not 100% familiar with. Yeah. But I also don't believe that, like, in, what was it, 68?
69, yeah. It was 69, yeah.
That you were able to live stream all of this happening from the moon. Like, we can barely get live stream to work nowadays, let alone adjusting for contrast and everything like that.
And especially how they did it, which was transmitting the footage to some random backward ass place in Australia, and then from there a video camera recorded that TV screen that was receiving the images, and then that got sent over to the States. And it's like, what? No.
Yeah, especially when you consider, like, even back in like the 80s and 90s, like news trucks, all the cables and giant satellites that were required just for like the local news.
Yeah, no.
Let alone something out of our atmosphere.
Exactly. And what's your thought on the moon landing? What do you think actually occurred? What do you think is truth?
I do believe that it happened. I do believe that it was recorded and probably sent separately. But there's actually a very good video. You can find it on YouTube. IGN posted it a couple years back, and it was I'm gonna say this wrong, Navita, I believe.
Yes, that he breaks down theory. Yes, yeah, he breaks down the lighting, he breaks down everything. Yes, that is a fascinating. We'll actually link that in the below comments, because I actually watched that a few days ago as well, and that was fascinating as hell. It was really intense. And also, they kind of do like another version in Mythbusters that's pretty similar to that, but this man like looks legit, not some random TV show, you know? And as much as I love Mythbusters, it's still a TV show. I don't know how much is real and how much is not. So, but no, I will say this. I think, and this is kind of a mixture of everything, I believe. I think that the moon landing was faked at the time of Apollo 11, because I don't think that they had the technology to go to the moon and land successfully. And not only that, I don't think they wanted to risk the chances of it failing or something happening to the astronauts when they got out of the rover and all that stuff. So what I think is that they filmed this, they recorded it, and they were able to set it to go in motion and all that stuff. And then they transmitted that, and they were just circling the Earth. Or maybe they even went to the moon and came back, but they didn't land. That's it. That's where I think is kind of the where I drew the line, because I was like, I don't think that they actually landed on the moon. I don't think that they had the technology to land on the moon because of the information that we received. That we, at that point in time, they were still trying to struggle with sending a person around the Earth and be able to come back. I really doubt that they had the technology for the boosters and everything to get around the moon at that point in time. Now, do I agree that we've never been to the moon? No, I think we have been to the moon. The thing is that they will never tell you and never disclose what those missions were. and when they occurred. I think that this was all facade, and this was all played for propaganda. I don't think that any of this was real when it comes to Apollo 11. It was all propaganda. And perfect proof of it is other conspiracy theories that the United States has admitted to, which, I mean, they're known for doing these things already. This is not something that's unusual, you know? And I think that we'll go into one of the biggest conspiracies and all that stuff, but that's my take on it. So, you know, take it for a grain of salt, but I think we'll be able to provide a couple evidences to why they can't do that in this episode. So you want to go into the first conspiracy, Alex, that kind of everybody looks at when they look at these pictures, since you brought up the video?
A lot of what people are saying is obviously the light in the photo. If the sun is supposed to be on the opposite side, how are they fully lit? That there are no stars in the background, that the flag is supposedly waving in the wind. And I apologize for my cat, who's being an intrusive little jerk right now. And how the flag was supposedly waving. Apparently there is also a breakdown, and I forgot where I saw it, that was saying that they actually like ran wire through the flag itself to make it stand up. So that it wouldn't just be like this limp flag when they placed it.
Yeah. Which you could kind of see that they did something to the flag to straighten it out a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, it goes back to, if it actually did happen on the moon, they could have, honestly, it makes sense, the NASA reason behind that. Like, their explanation and the scientists' explanation that they're able to plug in the flag and it still shook like that was the inertia of the flag being entered into the ground, and the astronaut hitting it on the side and all that stuff. It made it wiggle around like that.
Well, also, if you take into consideration this cat. Take into consideration this cat. This cat has a lot to say about the lunar landing.
Yeah, apparently.
A lot of what could feed into that as well is seismographs were put on the moon during different missions and everything like that, and they were registering what they call moonquakes, which were essentially the moon's equivalent of earthquakes, which also leads into another conspiracy of the hollow moon theory, which we'll reach in just a second. Let's get through the landing first. Yeah. Because I have a really funny comment about Apollo 12. That makes no sense. But a lot of the video that we had commented on does break down how it was possible for the lighting to be adjusted and everything. And why there are no stars seen is how much contrast needed to be put into the video for it to be visible in the first place.
Yep.
Makes everything clearer, and obviously the farther things are, it's gonna dim them out and make them just about invisible.
Not only that, but the video doesn't go into the fact that this was daytime on the moon. So just like it is for us, daytime, you're not going to see the stars as well as you'd like to. And yes, the moon doesn't have an atmosphere like us with clouds and all that stuff. The only reason we see blue is because it's reflecting from the water that's all around. I thought it was the water. Wasn't it the water that's reflecting?
I thought the same thing, and I swear I had a teacher who told me that at one point, but it's not. I'll pull that up. Continue what you were saying. That's not
there's something that's reflecting that makes the color blue. It makes it turn blue, and that's what creates the illusion of an atmosphere. But obviously, the moon doesn't have water or whatever it is that's causing the sky to turn blue, but it has the same effect. It blacks out and blanks out the stars, so you cannot see them. And that is a very prominent theory behind it. Again, it's a theory because I'm not a scientist, can't prove it. But that it's been told by multiple scientists that that's the reason why it's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But
our atmosphere is blue because blue light is scattered in all directions by tiny molecules in the atmosphere. Blue is scattered more than other colors because it travels in shorter, smaller waves, and that's from NASA themselves. So.
Oh, okay. So there you go. That's why the sky is blue. But did you have anything else to say about the shadows before we move on to the next one?
Not necessarily. I mean, people kind of linger on shadows. It's like it works on the moon the same way it works on Earth. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's guys.
Especially
we can't
when you
get
can
hung
take
up.
into consideration they were literally in, and there are people who have quoted this. Essentially, this spacecraft that they came in was nothing more than
Aluminum foil,
a really
and
high-tech
tape.
aluminum can.
Yeah,
Like,
and a lot of duct
what does
tape.
aluminum do? Reflects light. What does really white, like moon sand do? Reflects light.
What does a white moon suit do? Yeah,
Yeah,
it does
exactly.
the same thing.
So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, shadows definitely debunked. That's every time I've heard that theory, I've always been like, I don't know about that, guys, because no, I don't agree with that. And especially if somebody's gonna fake that, they're gonna fake it the right way. They ain't gonna be, completely BSing the whole story and all that stuff. And especially if it's somebody like, say, like a Stanley Kubrick, like, which is the theory behind everything.
And I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew you were going to bring up Kubrick.
Oh, of course I was. Come on now. A guy as meticulous as him would not be making an error as stupid as that.
Oh, yeah. And there was a couple other things that people had pointed out, and they're like, I'm sorry, have you seen Stanley Kubrick? Do you really think that would have happened? Do you really think that 15-degree tilt wouldn't have been adjusted?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. So the next thing, which goes to perfectly what we were just talking about, was technology to land on the moon and transmit from the moon. That, I think, plays a crucial part in this, because I don't think that they had the technology to land on the moon, much less get to the moon at that time. Or I could be completely wrong, and we've had this technology for the longest time, and it's just been completely, black opt, and it's something that none of us knew about.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe JFK did. That's why he called out the government on it and said, look, we got to make it public, the fact that we could land on the moon. So that's another theory that I could see that happening, because I could see our government saying, nope, we could land on the moon. We could do it. Because we just had a extraterrestrial visit that I believe we got technology from.
Well, and that's something that's been brought up multiple times over the years, as far as we know NASA has they live stream space and everything like that, but there are times where there are UFOs that come into view, and the live stream cuts off when those things happen. Or what was it? It's quantum transference or something like that, or quantum teleportation. How that has been brought up multiple times. It's like, yeah, NASA has the ability to teleport things.
I wouldn't doubt it. There's a whole the whole Philadelphia experiment that was a major issue that they were trying to get past and be able to teleport things. But not only that, we've already been able to teleport and publicly announce that we could move inanimate objects for the last 10 years, teleportation wise.
Mm-hmm.
So they've already had that, and it's been made public that people could do that. So why did that get shut down so quickly when it comes to foreign governments and all that stuff? So it goes back to, there's a lot of whole conspiracies that we could cover in the show, and we're definitely going to, because there's a lot of ground to cover.
Oh yeah.
our
A lot of
government
ground
lies a
and a lot of
lot.
space.
Yeah, exactly. So alien contact, what do you think about that? And did you think that actually had an effect on the fact that we went to the moon or we landed on the moon?
I don't believe that any contact that, and I am fully for the idea of extraterrestrials. There is no way that in our solar system or in another that there is no other like sentient life form. It's not possible. It's not probable.
Agreed.
That
Agreed
there
100%.
that there aren't aliens. Now, are they the little green men that we think of? Probably not. But also, they're out there. We have had to have had contact at some point. Do I believe it happened during the lunar landing? Not necessarily.
I believe it happened before.
Oh, I absolutely believe that it would have happened before. That's how else do you think we probably would have gotten ideas like this to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, if you want to go as far back as we can, look at I can't recall, but the holy scripture for what do you call it, Hinduism and Indian culture. I cannot remember the name of it.
Well, I mean, predate that too. I mean, look at the pyramids. Look at.
Well, this actually predates. This text actually predates the pyramids and everything. The drawings from it. Yeah, it's incredible. Like, there's actual descriptions of bombs going up in the air and incinerating the sky, and there's chariots in the sky and all that stuff. I mean, those are full descriptions where the chariots in the sky are actually sending out cylinders that are on fire and raise the sun in the horizon when they land. It's like, what? You're talking about like a battle of starcrafts and stuff like that, or airplanes, and this is like 2000 BC, that they're talking about these things. That's incredible. That's incredible. The fact that existed. And what does that explain? That means there's aliens here. Either that or a really advanced civilization. And where the hell did they go?
Yeah, and where the hell did all this technology go too? This is definitely something to touch on its own episode.
Yeah.
Because
oh yeah, the whole Atlantis theory and everything like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like what was really in the Library of Alexandria that we're missing now?
Yep.
And is it really missing though?
Mm-hmm. And was it the secret societies that actually took it? And that's the reason we had the Dark Ages and only religion survived. The monks are the only education that came out of there. Mm-hmm. Why is that? What were they protecting?
Hiding?
Yeah. What were they protecting and trying to hide? And that honestly started what we know now as society. It was the Dark Ages. And that gave credence to not only religion, but governments to leave in the dark their population. And our governments still do that a lot. Look at all the stuff that comes out afterwards, that gets declassified afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and the founding families have their hands all up in that.
Oh, yes. Which that's going to be a whole other... I think we're going to have to do a whole series on that, because that's a whole lot of content to cover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really do think that we have had contact with aliens. There's no other explanation for the technology jump that we had, especially in Germany, pre-World War II and during World War II. There's something there that we're missing. Now, there's a whole theory where there's actually an alien base on the moon. What do you think of that? What are your opinions on that?
Well, that also leads into, or lends itself to, not leads into, the hollow moon theory, yes. Which I found notes saying the first time that the hollow moon theory itself was suggested was actually H.G. Wells in 1901 in his book First Man in the Moon, but it also borrowed from other authors who were suggesting the hollow earth theory. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that we even had a hollow moon theory to begin with, even if it was science fiction at the time. Almost 70 years prior to us even considering going to the moon.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's some people that were way ahead of their time. HG was definitely one of them. Jules Verne is another one, and yeah, they were visionaries, and they definitely did set the pace for a lot of the things that we're doing now. And H.G. Wells is definitely one of those that you kind of understand where he's coming from when it comes to that, and makes you wonder why have we gone out to explore space, but we haven't gone to explore our own oceans?
We have.
Well, I think it's like almost 80% of the ocean has not been actually like geographically reviewed or seen or anything. And that's a big chunk of water that hasn't been viewed. Yeah, we went down to the Mariana Trench, but we kind of went and discovered maybe a quarter mile of the trench down there that goes on for thousands of miles.
Oh yeah.
So
no, I do not stand by the idea that the center of our planet is like just straight magma. No, there's definitely something in between all that.
Yeah. Definitely.
So
definitely.
The hollow moon theory states essentially that there at one point it was quoted the moon rang like a bell. And which is why I brought up a very funny comment about Apollo 12, because apparently, and what was it that they did? They deliberately launched a what was it that it was a portion of their thrusters, I believe. They deliberately launched it into the moon, and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, why? They essentially deliberately crashed this piece of equipment into the moon. And it's, what were you trying to do there?
Yeah, right.
Like, what were you trying to prove?
Yeah.
Or figure out? Outside of, hey, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to throw it at a planet. It's probably not as funny as I think it is, but I think it's hysterical.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, come on.
They said the moon rang like a bell for at least an hour after they did that. Which is odd, because
there's no sound in space.
That too, which is another thing I was about to. Yeah, it's kind of questionable. Now, do I feel the bell sound itself may have been the actual vibration coming off of the moon when that happened, and it kind of rattling whatever spacecraft, and that's what they were hearing.
Yeah, I could hear. I could see that.
Yeah, where that tone probably came from. I mean, honestly, it could have came from whatever they decided to launch into the moon in the first place. But this also goes back to the moonquakes, where the seismographs measuring these, it also kind of baffled me a little bit. And again, I'm sure there's science behind this that I just don't even have the knowledge to grasp. But what would be causing these moonquakes?
Mm-hmm. Because there's no seismic activity there.
Oh yeah. Now, do I believe that there's a base inside of the moon? Not necessarily.
I think that this is where I was going at with the ocean. Is the ocean is the moon controls the ocean a lot. Our tides, our moods, our personalities, everything is controlled by the moon.
Well, that has more to, and that's what I do believe is lending to the moonquakes, is that's a lot of gravitational pull.
Yes,
so that's a lot of friction and gravitational pull there. So yes, the moon has effect gravitationally on the waters and everything like that. And as much as people want to bash on different like astrology things, am I saying every single astrological sign is correct to a person? Not necessarily. But do I believe that crazy people kind of come out on a full moon? It makes sense.
It does.
It
really
makes a
does.
little bit of sense.
It really does. And not only that, there's this whole theory that is very fascinating, and it actually does make sense, and it does line up with like chakras and energy release points, is the pyramids that are lined around the center of the earth. They actually line up pretty close to the equator and around the Tropic of Cancer. And that line belt that flows around the whole earth, it's followed by pyramids in certain spots where the energy and magnetism is actually released the most. And I find that fascinating because there is a whole theory about a pyramid on the moon. So what if that pyramid is kind of the main thing that's pointing to the earth? The magnetism and everything, and holding not only the moon to the earth, and it's not just our magnetic pull, our what do you call it, gravitational pull that's holding it, but how about if it's something that's more?
I think that one's a bit out of my reach for a theory. I don't know if I stand by that one.
No, but I mean, it's a fascinating theory. That's what I think of. I think that is a very fascinating theory, and how true it is, I don't think we'll ever know, honestly. I think it's going to take a lot of geographing and like actually going and exploring these sections of not only the earth but the moon, and seeing if there's anything there. What do you think about like the fact that there might be a pyramid on the moon? What do you think of that?
I feel like even if it's on, and I understand the moon is tidal locked in place, so we do only see one side of it. What was it? We only see about 18% of the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah. So only about 18% of what people will refer to as the dark side, or essentially the far side of the moon, only 18% of it is occasionally visible from Earth.
Yes. Now,
we have sent out space shuttles and ships and probes and satellites and all this stuff, so we have pictures.
But
and there's not to say that they couldn't be doctored. I understand that.
Not only that they can't be doctored, but they can't be controlled, which is different. The government controls any images that are released to the public. We've seen that already, even by their official statement of how the moon landing was actually broadcasted. So there has to be an extent of control that if they want to cover up something, they could cover it up pretty easily.
Well, then you're also pretty much saying that not only are we covering up a pyramid on the moon, there would have to be multiple.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
So there would have to be multiple on the moon that we have in no way seen. There would be pyramids on other planets as well.
Which they've already discussed that there could be pyramids on the surface of Mars.
Yes, no, there are photos of that.
So that would make sense. How about if maybe Mars had a civilization and traveled to our moon, and they built pyramids there, and they built pyramids here, and maybe that's how we got that. Maybe that culture that they're talking about in those holy scriptures is Mars.
That is very possible, and that would also explain how we had such like a lapse in history, because obviously we used to have all of this really advanced technology at some point, but then if you look back, you're like, okay, well, first of all, where did it go? Second of all, at what point did the dinosaurs come into this? Because obviously we can track back how far that was.
Yeah. And not only that, the gap that you're talking about is the Sumerians to the Babylonians. That huge gap of almost I think it's close to a whole millennia, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's close to 1,000 years, that jump. So a lot could happen in 1,000 years. I mean,
I do I can definitely get behind the idea that, some of the recorded history and some of the recorded technologies that we have been brought aware of could have absolutely been from another planet, could have very possibly come from another civilization on a different planet, and be it Mars or another planet. Because I mean, everybody loves to go with the idea that, Mars was originally our home planet and we nuked it. And that, I mean, history repeats itself, could very well be the case.
Yeah, it very well could be. And it's fascinating to see all these different variables. And I mean, you think about it, and there's so many different possibilities, and by seeing all these possibilities and leaving yourself open, you could actually see that maybe the moon landing was not completely honest. Maybe there's stuff that's hidden in it. And I think a lot of the evidence is a lot of bullshit, but there's also a lot of like common sense things that you could see, and you'll be like, hold on a second, no, back the fuck up. There's something there. We really got to review this and actually analyze what the hell you're talking about and see if there's a nugget of truth in there. Because let's be real, I don't think the technology existed to do that. So how did you guys do this? And if that was the case and there was technology to do that, you guys have been lying to us about the technology that you have.
Oh no, they absolutely do. They consistently do. That's why everybody's losing their mind over Area 51. We absolutely know that the government, and there have been whistleblowers left, right, and center about it, the government has access to these technologies that we can't even fathom.
Yep.
Like when they come out with a new piece of tech, that tech has probably been around for at least 20 to 50 years at this point.
Yep.
But they're just letting us into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then there's people that actually push that envelope and they say, oh, but how about this and that? And no, there's a lot of truth to these people that are coming out and whistleblowing. They're not traitors. They're none of that. They're trying to bring truth because they've been lied to and they have been having to lie to other people. And, that's not fair to the population, I think.
No, that's not.
So, we have to seek the truth. And you're going to find a lot of bullshit in that information, though, and in that journey, because a lot of people are douchebags and they want to just lie through their teeth and make fantastic stories,
Oh yeah, people want their 10 seconds of fame. There's the one podcast I had told you about, Mile Higher podcast.
Yes.
We'll shamelessly plug them. They're pretty cool. They brought up there's a gentleman who swears
Stephen Greer.
Oh yeah, he's the one who thinks he's like a star child and everything like that.
Yep.
Yeah, and he goes on about like, oh yeah, like, and this is my space wife, and these are our space kids, and oh look, we have recordings of them calling us. Like, they go out to the desert. Yeah, we have these perfectly timed alien videos, and it's like, this is where we can't have nice things.
And the documentary you're talking about is Sirius. That's the name of it.
It's on Netflix, isn't it?
It's on YouTube now, actually.
Oh, it's on YouTube now? Okay.
Yeah. We actually discussed that on this week's episode of Manbitesfilm. I reviewed it and talked it up because I was actually listening to that podcast from Mile Higher, and they're so good. So good. I honestly, I'll give the what do you call it, the actual conspiracy theory of the moon landing 7 out of 10, meaning plausible, but there's a lot of bullshit behind it and in front of it that is covering up the real facts, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think...
Honestly, I don't even think it was necessarily them, like, trying to hide some big thing, but you got to think, like, we were in the middle of all this different stuff happening in the U.S. Like, morale was real low.
Not only that, we were at war.
Oh, yeah, no, but it was Vietnam and there was another one.
We're during the Cold War.
Yeah, there we go.
So
all
I
the
mean,
birds get, like, and all that. So yeah, people needed something at that point to kind of keep them going and like keep their faith in America at that point.
yeah,
And
because Russia's been kicking our ass.
Yeah, because Sputnik goes up, and honestly, the only thing I think of when I think of Sputnik is the Iron Giant, because I can't think of that little beaver singing "Duck and Cover." Apparently, that's what stuck from my childhood. Which is actually a really interesting fact that Sputnik was only about the size of a basketball, but weighed 183 pounds.
Yeah, because it was metal.
Well, yes, but still.
And all the gyros and all that shit that they put in it.
Yes, I understand that stuff is heavy, but that's also, I'm thinking like in size comparison, this thing weighed like 20 more pounds than I do in the size of a basketball.
Yeah.
Trust me, I understand like small round objects can be very heavy. I've seen Highland sports. You pick up heavy shit and you put it down. Like, I understand it's possible. It's just really hard for me to think of.
How much shit they put in it to make it weigh that much? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and have it still functioning.
Yeah, right.
Because you got to think, like, yeah, you can make a really heavy stone, but it's a solid stone. It doesn't have like all this mechanical stuff going on inside of it.
Very true.
And then when you condense that size down, which also, like, if that technology didn't exist, I'm sorry, when was the first IBM computer created?
Right.
That thing was massive.
Yeah.
Massive. Yeah. And you're telling me you fit all of this tech into a basketball-sized satellite that you managed to send up into space and still get information out of.
Oh, let's not even go into that, because the technology on the spacecrafts, those were, I think the computing power was that of a calculator. It's like, what? We can't even run our cell phones on the information and what do you call it, memory that they used for the whole spacecraft to launch to the moon. It's like, what? How did they do that? How is that possible? Like, telemetry, all these different things that they needed to send back to Earth and be able to do that. And then let's go into the science of the what do you call it, Van Allen belt. I don't know if you've explored that theory as well. Which
I got Google up to give me a second.
The Van Allen belt is this magnetic, and what do you call it? It actually has radiation. It's a radiation belt around the planet Earth, and it's all due to the magnetism that is unleashed by the Earth. And because of this, Russian theorists actually stated that they cannot travel to the moon, because if they send somebody through that radiation belt, they will die.
Yes.
And
how do astronauts survive radiation in space? A human mission to Mars means sending astronauts into interplanetary space for a minimum of a year, even with a very short stay on the red planet. Nearly all of that time. Well, this isn't.
No, that's Mars. But
no. I mean, it comes up when you
really
the Van Allen belt and all the radiation that they're talking about. It's like,
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure it exists on every planet, because there's a magnetic pull on every planet. So I'm pretty sure every planet has their own little belt that they got to go through. And that's very interesting, actually. I wonder if it's stronger on other planets that are more dense or something like that, you know? That's fascinating. But on Earth, it's like this certain area that the Americans said, no, we could travel through it. We're going to be going through it so fast that honestly, it's just going to be like a CT scan. That's about the amount of radiation. And I'm like, Russians are saying it's going to kill you. Americans are saying, it's just a CT scan. You'll be fine.
I mean, we've all seen what America constitutes as fine nowadays.
Right. But so it makes you wonder, how could they have traveled through there and survived? You know, and if you notice, an aluminum
can.
Exactly. That was the other thing. That was the reason why the Russians said they can't make it, because it has to be like lead-lined rockets and spacecraft, and that's too heavy for them to travel with.
Well, I mean, there's not to say that it wasn't lined with lead. I mean, we had lead in paint for God knows how long.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the amount that would keep the radiation out is a whole different thing.
Well,
So,
I mean, the man doesn't have a testicle. I mean...
but, all right, so if you notice, the first two Apollo missions, the three astronauts, they passed away of natural circumstances, or they're still alive, and they didn't have these gruesome deaths, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, after the second Apollo mission, the third Apollo mission, and I think the substantial 3 other ones that came afterwards, the ones that went to the moon, that is, they all suffered from cancer, and they all died of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you wonder if maybe those first 2 missions didn't happen, but maybe that third mission actually did happen, and they broke that Van Allen belt. But it also killed them because of the radiation.
Right.
So that's another thing that people bring up as a conspiracy theory, why we couldn't have done Apollo 11 and that landed on the moon. Maybe it was the other Apollo missions that did it.
It's possible.
So it's fascinating seeing that aspect of it as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But before we wrap up on this episode, what are your final thoughts on this, and what do you think, honestly, we could actually draw from the conspiracy itself?
Well, I do stand by the idea that we did go to the moon. It probably wasn't when we said it was, and it may not have happened exactly as history believes it did. Do I believe we found aliens when we went to the moon and that's why it was faked? Not necessarily. I feel like we had contact before that. I do kind of think the lunar landing was to kind of boost morale in the US at the time. I don't believe that the moon is some like alien spaceship.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe that one either.
Yeah, I don't believe that there's a base on the moon, some secret government base on the moon. But I know that the government is not very truthful with us about what is going on with the moon.
Yeah. Okay.
Do I think it's any more than a giant space rock? No.
I'll agree with you on those, most of those points. The only one I would say that I don't agree with is I think that we do have a base on the moon. And the reason why is because I think they just officially announced like about a month ago that by 2022, I think it is that they said, or 23, we are going to have a moon base.
So you think that they've already been working on it?
Yes. And I think that they already have it, or they found something that was there already, and now they're retrofitting it and making it seem like we built it. Since now public companies are going out into outer space. They're like, oh shit, we got to cover our trails. Let's build something on the moon and say that we built it.
That would make sense.
So,
I can definitely see them doing something like that.
It's just, it's freaking weird how hasn't been a single moon talk for 30 years. And then suddenly private companies are going into outer space and have made it successfully into outer space and say that they're going to be going to Mars next. And then suddenly NASA's like, oh, we got to wake up. Hold on a second. They're going to outer space. We're freaking out. Like, oh my God, they're going to find the moon base. What happens if they find the moon base? It's so like convenient that they just suddenly had the urge to build a moon base.
Well, I don't necessarily think that it's the moon in particular that they're concerned about people figuring out about. I'm sure a lot of that comes down to how much contact we have had with extraterrestrials and the such. that they're like, oh, hey, we might be outed for a lot of the stuff that we've been keeping from you, even though we tend to let a little bit trickle out every once in a while, which is something to talk about in one of the future episodes about how many of these whistleblowers are actually whistleblowers and not just people who have been chosen to go out and let out just a little bit of information to keep people like quelled enough and not ask more questions.
Oh yeah, and that's going to go into the whole manipulation of the media and manipulation of mass media, period.
And do I have some things about that?
Oh yeah, same here. No, but honestly, I agree with you on a lot of the points that you've brought up, and I think the good part about conspiracy theories and everything is you have to have that open dialogue. Have a conversation and think logically. Don't think emotionally about what you think. Oh, that it has to be that. No, there's no certainty in these things until they actually give those details out and declassify things and all that stuff. That's the only time we'll know the truth. And maybe we will know the truth. It could actually be lies too.
Oh, I don't think we're ever going to know the full truth.
And but we got to do what we can with the information that we have and read between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what a lot of it is. And there's a lot of these conspiracy theory, like documentaries and everything that you hear and you're like, I don't know about that. That's a little stretch. But there's some real nuggets in there. And there's like, wow, that's some interesting stuff, man. That's some really interesting stuff. So yeah, I think that there is a little bit of truth to a little bit of everything. And for anybody that wants to go and explore further on these conspiracies and everything, there's a whole slew of conspiracies on YouTube and everything that you could explore. But for the moon landing in particular, there's a very good mockumentary called Operation Avalanche, which is very funny and very good, and it's by some of my favorite duo of actors and directors, and they kind of do like this comedic twist to the faking of the moon landing, where they're actually hiring Stanley Kubrick to do the moon landing and not hiring him per se, but copying his techniques to fake the moon landing. And it's pretty funny mockumentary, and it's streaming on Amazon Prime actually. So if you want to go check that out, that's actually a really fun time. And it's shot like old school footage and all that stuff. So it's really fun for its time and all that. So thank you, Alex, for joining us on this inaugural episode of Alt Reality, exploring the moon landing.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Yes. And our next episode, we are going to be following all those crazy trolls out there that want to rush Area 51. So in September, we're going to be dropping an episode about Area 51 and all the alien controversy that lies behind it. My name is Luis, and again, this is another episode of Alt Reality. If you want to explore more of Manbitesmedia, please check out Manbitesfilm that drops every Friday, and Manbitesretro, which is on this channel itself. We drop episodes every Wednesday as well. And our latest edition, Cellar Door, an exploration of Tolkien's world and mythology, if you want to check that out as well. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you guys next month for another episode.